What do you think is the most abnormal episode of SpongeBob? It's really tricky to answer, right? Earlier this year, I made a video of what's the most normal episode of SpongeBob. While that video was already a weird journey in itself, it's nothing compared to finding its exact opposite, the most abnormal episode. Because what even counts as abnormal in this show? People get nuked, ripped in half, and travel through time every other week. And considering SpongeBob's already been running for more than 25 years, their crazy standard pretty much went on a roller coaster. So instead of going back and forth with the standards, I'm gonna try to find the one episode that feels so out of place compared to the rest in the same season, it feels like an abnormality. Alright boys, buckle up, and let's see how absurd this list can get. We're kicking things off with the first golden era of SpongeBob, Season 1, and right from the beginning, the show already gives us some pretty obscure stuff to pick from. This season is the best when it comes to world-building stuff. You've got starter episodes like Bubble Stand and Reef Blower playing around with the weird physics of this underwater town. They also love the exploring another realm theme here, like in Sandy's Rocket, Rock Bottom, and Neptune's Spatula. Meanwhile, if you want the actual time and space weirdness, look no further than SB-129. So, taking all that into consideration, the one episode that really stands out in Season 1 is I Was a Teenage Gary. Because for one, I Was a Teenage Gary is a rare first horror episode paired with Scaredy Pants. The fact that this was the first Halloween special also gives it a lot of credit for its unsettling tone. The whole panic of SpongeBob and Squidward starting to transform into these weird snail versions of themselves after that accidental snail plasma injection is just a different category compared to any of the time travel episodes. I mean, it's an episode you'd find hard to explain to your mom, which is kind of the theme for the whole list, basically. Now, as much as I love the grainy, washed out, and hand-drawn look of Season 1, Season 2 is the one that immortalizes the golden standard for what people call peak SpongeBob. It's stacked with OG memorable episodes like Dying for Pie, The Fry Cook Games, Something Smells, and Band Geeks. I also noticed that the writers really love to make plots about food in Season 2. Even outside the ones I just mentioned, you've still got stuff like Patty Hype and Jellyfish Hunter that play around with Krabby Patties. Even Band Geeks has some jokes about food in it.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Which is why Shanghai feels really abnormal in comparison. I mean, come on. The writing for Shanghai is genius and absurd at the same time.
This guy had a baby!
After the anchor drop, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward visit the Flying Dutchman in his glowing green ship to complain about the anchor. From there, everything escalates in the best way. Squidward gets torched and tossed into the void, Patrick and SpongeBob roam around the city to help the Dutchman scare people, and then the whole negotiation for the 3 wishes is pure gold. And who could forget the whole perfume section bit? This episode is abnormal even by Season 2 standards. Then we move on to the last in the Golden Age, Season 3. This season is special for a good reason. Everything they did here is nothing less than perfection. I swear, half of all the SpongeBob memes and quotes come from this season alone. But beyond the writing and the jokes, Season 3 puts a lot of character exploration into each episode, especially for Mr. Krabs. Because there are at least 16 episodes that take place either around the Krusty Krab or use Mr. Krabs as the source of the problems. Episodes like Midlife Crustacean, Clams, and Born Again Krabs all feel like different, obscure ways of saying, how far can this crab go before the universe has to stop him? However, when we're talking about abnormal episodes, there are some pretty good contenders here. Nasty Patty is about covering up the accidental murder of the health inspector, even though it didn't really happen. We also have the season special Ugh, with all its Unga Bunga stuff. But I'm afraid none of them come close to what happens in I Had an Accident. The setup alone is already strange. SpongeBob shatters his butt in a sandboarding accident, gets paranoid about the outside world, and basically self-quarantines in his house with 3 inanimate objects as his new friends. And that's still nothing compared to arguably the weirdest 3 minutes of our lives watching SpongeBob. It's just not normal for a kid's cartoon, okay? And that's the Golden Seasons. I feel like we're finding some interesting choices so far, but we're still at the start of this journey. If anything, these abnormal episodes still feel tame compared to what we're about to run into once the show hits its later eras. Season 4 still carries a lot of momentum from the previous era, but you can feel the tone shifting. The pacing gets a little different, and the season really doesn't lean into those deeper character moments the way Season 2 and 3 love to. But it's still not a bad season overall. What it does start doing, however, is experimenting a lot with introducing new things to the canon to expand the lore of Bikini Bottom. We got stuff like Selling Out, Chimps Ahoy, and The Thing, which gave us some more big characters in the show. I love Kelpie G. Then there's some episodes about families like Enemies-in-Law and Rule of Dumb. But when it comes to weird plots that feel abnormal for Season 4 specifically, not many of them stick out more than That's No Lady. That's why I think this one's a no-brainer. I mean, come on. Patrick misunderstands the situation, panics, and the solution is, cool, so I guess we're cross-dressing now. Patricia immediately becomes the center of attention, and the episode escalates into her working at the Krusty Krab and managing to charm the pants off of everybody. I'm still feeling kind of weirded out by this episode. Now, SquidBob Tentacle Pants is a strong contender because it's literally SpongeBob and Squidward getting fused together, which is equally disgusting and fascinating. But if I have to pick between the whole main cast gets morphed into one body, and Patrick successfully catfishes an entire town and has grown men acting silly over Patricia, I'm going with Patricia. It's less sci-fi weird and more socially cursed, which somehow feels worse. For Season 5, honestly, it doesn't feel like it's trying to reinvent the wheel. It continues the Season 4 style for the most part, and like they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Except, they did start messing with canon more aggressively here, especially with 4 different special episodes. Friend or Foe, Atlantis Square Pantis, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob, Pest of the West. And Friend or Foe gives us the full Krabs and Plankton childhood backstory. So you'd think the abnormal pick would be one of those lore-heavy moves. But no, Spongehenge takes the spot for the most abnormal episode. Everything about this episode feels out of place, even by SpongeBob standards. SpongeBob basically gets pulled into this weird jellyfish myth arc, becomes famous for making sound from his body holes, gets pushed out by the same jellyfish that worshipped him, and then spends who knows how long building his own underwater Stonehenge, only to realize he's effectively outlived civilization.
How long was I gone? No!
And the ending doesn't even try to comfort you. It time skips thousands of years into the future, and Spongehenge now is just a tourist attraction for aliens taking pictures. If anything, that only makes our decision for Season 5 easier. As for Season 6, things get a little complicated here. I don't know what really happened in between Seasons 5 and 6, but for some reason, they are going all out with the gross visuals here. There are some episodes with infamous gross visuals. You know what I'm talking about. And there's some flat-out strange ones, like No Nose Nose and Squid's Visit. Squidward also starts getting tortured obnoxiously around this time. And Krabs goes all out with his Flanderization in Krabby Chronicle and Patty Caper. But weirdly enough, the one that feels the most out of place is Dear Vikings. Now, I'm not saying the episode is bad or anything. There are some very enjoyable moments in Dear Vikings. Unfortunately, the writing feels alienating compared to the rest of the season. SpongeBob becomes obsessed with Vikings, writes them a Dear Vikings letter asking about their lives, and then the Vikings respond by actually showing up and dragging SpongeBob and Squidward into their whole Viking lifestyle bit. It feels more like something Finn would do in Adventure Time rather than SpongeBob, if you know what I'm saying. And yeah, if this is where we are by Season 6, we're officially stepping into real obscure territory. As rough as Season 6 sounds, I still think it's easier than what comes next. Season 7 really does feel like an extreme jump. I mean, where do we even start? Some episodes are just mean-spirited, some feel like they exist purely to torture the cast, and then there's a big chunk of the season that just feels uninspired. I think they didn't really have any new ideas for Season 7, so they just decided to level up everything that happened in Season 6. Also, what's with all the folklore monsters in this season? Like Man Ray and Dirty Bubble didn't feel threatening enough, so now we're fighting random sea cryptids too? But luckily, there's still one good abnormal episode that serves as a beacon of hope for Season 7. You guessed it, it's Squidward in Clarinet Land. Well, technically, they didn't stop torturing Squidward here, but the plot, as trippy as it is somewhat interesting to follow. The setup is already ridiculous in the best way. Squidward demands extra space for his clarinet, Krabs solves the problem by handing him some ancient locker situation, and of course, he has to share it with SpongeBob because Bikini Bottom HR is a myth. Then SpongeBob turns that locker into a backroom clarinet dimension, and Squidward spends the rest of the episode chasing him through this endless, trippy backroom orchestra nightmare. And I can't lie, the Eaglehead is one of the few characters in Season 7 who shows up, says something weirdly profound, and leaves me with a pleasant feeling.
A clarinet is not owned. Why don't you tell me why you're really here?
It's trippy, it's entertaining, and comes with some enjoyable visuals. Truly different from the rest of the season. Now, Season 8 is honestly an improvement from Season 7. You've got some good ones, like Drive-Thru and Planet of the Jellyfish. Sadly, it's basically two extremes. It's either forgettable filler, or it's an episode that leans hard on discomfort. That's why the Season 8 abnormal picks are either body horror or emotional bleakness. I initially wanted to go with Ghoul's Fools for this one, since it's a proper Halloween special with a dark, spooky tone, featuring the ghosts of the Flying Dutchman's crew and Squidward's eventual acceptance of his own demise in the void. But I think It's a SpongeBob Christmas is a better choice, because it looks and moves like SpongeBob got kidnapped into an old-school holiday TV special. It's done in stop motion, inspired by those classic Rankin Bass-style Christmas visuals. The plot is clean, too. SpongeBob just wants Bikini Bottom to have a nice Christmas, Plankton slips zirconium into fruitcakes to turn everyone into jerks, the town goes sour instantly, SpongeBob has to scramble for a cure, and the fix ends up being a literal song antidote because, of course it is. Then Santa shows up, initially rewards Plankton, and immediately takes it back once the truth comes out, ending with the exact kind of petty, comic justice that SpongeBob loves. It's a kid-friendly episode, and that's abnormal compared to most of the abominations in Season 8. Up next, Season 9 is another big transitional moment for SpongeBob. I guess they really wanted to step up from Season 8, that's why the team is willing to try lots of new, interesting stuff. You've got a widescreen ratio now, and a more crisp color. But it's not an instant, better season yet, because you definitely still feel that something is lacking. The writing in Season 9 is still kinda meh. I mean, the jokes and the actions are somewhat good, but you still crave some of those golden standard jokes from the earlier seasons to make it perfect. I think if only they had those, this season would have been very memorable. And when it comes to abnormal picks, Season 9 really doesn't give you as many slam dunk choices as you'd think. There is some strange stuff like Patrick Mann and Married to Money, but to me, the clearest what am I watching pick is Kenny the Cat. The whole episode already feels surreal to look at. Bikini Bottom basically gets a celebrity cat, which is the underwater version of Tom from Tom and Jerry. SpongeBob is his fanboy, obviously, and the entire thing plays like a media parody fever dream. Then Sandy does the only sane thing anyone does in the episode. She calls him a fraud because a land mammal can't breathe underwater, and she's right. Kenny's literally using an oxygen tank behind the scenes. And knowing that Tom Kenny voices both SpongeBob and Kenny for this episode, it makes it even weirder. The man is basically talking with his alter ego for the entire episode. As for Season 10, it's a short list. The writers could have been testing ideas just for fun and said, right, why don't we make that a whole season? Actually, they made it short because most of the team was occupied working on the movie at the time, or that's what they said. But still, you could see the fresh ideas they had here. Mimic Madness is kinda good. They proved an exaggerated visual doesn't have to come with a disgusting feeling. But then you also had sports and whirly brains that are straight up brainless. Yeah, it's fresh, but that doesn't always mean it's good. Weirdly enough, I wanted to pick Feral Friends again for the most abnormal choice. But that would be contradicting since I also picked it for the most normal one. I don't know, Feral Friends was the most normal pick because their behavior becomes literally animal-like, but it's also the most abnormal pick because the show stops being SpongeBob and temporarily becomes National Geographic Bikini Bottom Edition. Does that make sense? Other than that, I think housewarming deserves the second spot. It's Parasite Nightmare Fuel, where SpongeBob becomes an apartment complex for an entire worm civilization, and he's way too committed to the bit. Yeah, it's one of those two abnormalities. And we're past the dark age of SpongeBob. That's the hardest stuff done, I guess. Whew. Or at least that's what I think. Because even though the rest of the modern seasons aren't as obnoxiously loud as the Dark Ages, the journey of finding the most abnormal episodes didn't get any easier from here. We've officially entered season 11, where the writers focused on making the humorous bits the whole premise of the episodes. Which is nice since they've proven to have better overall jokes than season 10, with episodes like Squid Noir, Scavenger Pants, and Mustard O' Mine. Unfortunately, that decision also brings us some lame, painfully obnoxious ones like Pat the Horse and Ink Lemonade. They're just tiresome to watch. But when it comes to abnormal episodes, season 11 had some pretty interesting choices. Squirrel Jelly is definitely abnormal and not in a good way. Doodle Dimension is also a strong contender for opening that strange portal to the Chalk Zone realm. But if I'm picking the one episode that feels like a different genre entirely, I have to give it to Krabby Patty Creature Feature. The plot is basically about what if the Krabby Patty became a zombie outbreak. A new secret Patty variation hits Bikini Bottom, people start turning into patty creatures, and suddenly the Krusty Krab is a containment breach facility with pickles. SpongeBob spends the episode trying to fix the disaster, and the cure ends up being hilariously on brand. He feeds chum to the infected until they revert back to normal, and then everyone collectively remembers the original Krabby Patty recipe was already perfect. As for season 12, I think saying it's the bottom line of SpongeBob history is not exaggerating. Personally, I don't really enjoy season 12, and I think most people would agree. But I also know some people that say season 12 is gold and better than season 10. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag with this one. There's still some good, memorable episodes here, like the obvious SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, and a few underrated ones like Karen's Baby and The Ghost of Plankton. But when you compare it to the stinky parts of the spectrum, they get overshadowed pretty quickly, which at least means our choice for the abnormal spot is stacked. So what do we got? There's The Nitwitting, SpongeBob's Bad Habit, Gary's Got Legs is also not normal. So much to pick from here. I thought I had to pick some really bad episodes for the abnormal episode here, but that's when I remembered we've got a solid abnormal for season 12. Yes, it's SpongeBob in Randomland. The setup is simple and perfect. Squidward gets an order from Randomland, tries to refuse it like a sane employee, Mr. Krabs forces the delivery anyway, and then the episode becomes a guided tour through a place where logic is optional. The surreal journey itself is the joke for the episode. They have to walk randomly to even reach it. The environment keeps shifting rules on them, and the episode commits hard to surrealism as a setting rather than just a gag. Even though I didn't always understand what's happening there, at least the interesting visual style gives us something to look at. Oh, and they finally acknowledged the Red Mist reference, so that's another plus. It's random, and it's definitely abnormal. But just when I thought season 12 was hard to pick from, season 13 is rough and bland, to say the least. I don't know, man. It felt like they were running out of ideas and trying to scrape up all the little bits of jokes they had left. They overused some spin-off characters like Bubble Bass, Slappy, and Narlene. God, I hate Narlene. And half of the time, nothing really interesting happened in the stories. For the abnormal candidate, Pat the Dog is definitely up there. A Skin Wrinkle in Time is weird in a confusing way. I don't mind it though. And Squid Ferratu is conceptually bizarre, even by SpongeBob standard. But I'm gonna give the spot to Welcome to Binary Bottom. Watching robot versions of Bikini Bottom characters doing their daily routines is unexpectedly enjoyable. Even if the episode isn't fun in the classic sense, it's undeniably abnormal in a way that feels bigger than a single gag because the setting itself is the punchline. But I think that's expected based on season 13 standards. And yep, we're finally on the last part of our journey now. The most recent modern SpongeBob from the last 2 years. And wouldn't you know it, there are some interesting abnormal choices here. Starting with season 14, the show starts doing that thing where it tries to be more itself than itself, which is always a dangerous credo for any franchise to live by. It's deliberate that they're trying to bring back some classic energy and plot stylings from the first 3 golden seasons, which sadly translates into some nostalgia bait episodes. The ones like Squiddy at Box and PL 1413 are definitely recycled from the earlier Idiot Box and SB-129 episodes. It's not deliberately bad or anything, it's actually quite enjoyable, it just feels a little lackluster, especially when compared to its predecessor. Then you get the ones that feel brain-dead weird like Sponge Chovy, where the town turns into anchovies, like the writers dared themselves to see how long they could keep a single bit alive. In the Mood for Feud is my least favorite because you know why, Arlene. But then we got some abnormal gems, like the 45-minute specials Creepaway Camp and my pick for this season's most abnormal, Snow Yellow and the 7 Jellies. It may be a little biased because I love the retelling of some classic old stories. And it's just fun to see SpongeBob and Bikini Bottom reenacting Snow White in their own underwater world. I hope they explore this kind of thing more in the future, but then again, it's personal taste. Season 15 isn't much different, and shares the same critiques I have with seasons 13 and 14 in general. Though I have to give them credit for bringing back the enjoyable storytelling pace. They also start to explore more and more about the characters again, instead of just forcing slapstick torture bits, which makes it feel more memorable and distinct than the previous season. A Fish Called Sandy is the most popular episode in this season, and for good reason. They brought back some of the old classic visual style with some classic references as well. It's one of the better nostalgic episodes, in my opinion. I also really love the fact that there are lots of Squidward-centric episodes in season 15. My favorites are Muse-Bob Model Pants and Wiener Takes All. I just love seeing Squidward go on different kinds of adventures without getting tortured by someone else's stupidity. Coincidentally, that's why my pick for the most abnormal, as well as my favorite in season 15, is Unidentified Flailing Octopus. A story about Squidward and his house getting abducted by aliens that are shaped like tiki heads is really interesting and creative. I don't know why they don't make episodes like this more often. And with SpongeBob and Patrick almost non-existent in this episode, it allowed Squidward to carry the plot and be goated. Last but not least, there's season 16. At the time that I'm making this list, season 16 is still ongoing, and the newest episode is Pigskin Pearl. There were some funny, abnormal episodes in season 16, with ones like The Curse of Weredoodle, where SpongeBob transforms into a doodle every time his pencil hits full moonlight. Then he goes around rampaging everywhere with creative pencil drawings. And Squidward's Tough Break, because it's not every day you see Squidward and tough in the same sentence. It's fun to see him ditching the finesse jazz stuff and embracing the heavy metal motorcycle for once. But I think we've got the obvious answer for season 16. Just like the name suggests, Bizarro Bottom. I made a video about this one a while back. The story about SpongeBob getting stranded in a solitary part of Bikini Bottom and meeting the opposite version of everyone from Bikini Bottom definitely doesn't feel normal to me. Even if the episode isn't fun in the classic sense, it's undeniably abnormal in a way that feels bigger than squeezing a single gag, because the setting itself is the punchline. And that's the end of our abnormal journey. I can already hear some of you screaming in disagreement with the choices I made while making this video. So let me say it out loud. What episode do you think is the most abnormal? Honestly, if anything, this whole video kind of messed with my head a little, because it proves something I didn't fully appreciate before. This show keeps changing what weird and normal even mean. It's obvious the show has different kinds of crazy depending on the era. Seasons 1 through 3 are controlled chaos, so abnormal episodes feel like freak accidents. Seasons 4 to 6 is the experimental transition era, so abnormal feels less like a glitch and more like a warning sign. And nowadays, abnormal isn't just the story anymore, it's the shape of the show. Stop motion specials, big event episodes, and the like. They've experimented with so many things over the years because they refuse to die. Which is funny because I think they've considered stopping, at least creatively, more than once. Like they've tried out possible endings a few times, even if the series just keeps going. In my previous video, I talked about the episode that could have been the perfect finale for SpongeBob. So if you want to break from the abnormal stuff and instead want to see the one time it almost landed the plane so perfectly, that's the video to watch next. I'll see you on the next dive.